All right, what's up, guys? Today we are doing one of the other coffees that I got. We're gonna try first, since we were doing the medium roast classic roast, the medium roast German roasted low acidity Barismo coffee. So it says on the side, aromatic and well balanced. We've got coffee beans from the best growing regions of Latin America, perfectly balanced with the finest East African coffees, an aromatic full bodied blend with well balanced finish. So, what we're gonna do with these packages is that's just coffee grounds. Once we open that bag, it's probably done, useless. There's like a cardboard thing inside of it usually, and we need to pour it in something. So I have an old Great Value, which is Walmart Colombian tin that I use for when I just keep for bags. So it's not gonna be perfect because it still smells like all the weird old coffees I had in here, like most strongly of Cafe Bustelo Espresso. As you remember, I was talking about that before. Seems like this one doesn't have the cardboard I've seen in some. It's just really well vacuum sealed. Because I can like kind of move it. Yeah. Alright. Let's get this out of here. If I can get it open. This does not want to open very easily. Split it. I'm struggling, guys. This is kind of why I didn't do this the other day. I knew this would be... Here, you know what? I just wanted to make the coffee easy the other day. And I ended up then ranting for 6 hours. Oh, that smells really good. Oh, wow, this smells light years better than the other stuff, which is to be expected, of course, because this is like, they're good premium stuff, you know? So we're going to go ahead and get this opened up, then just straight pour it in there first. Well, you know what? To ensure that we have absolutely zero cross-contamination, for the first cup, we're just gonna open and scoop directly from the bag. So that way we aren't scooping out of the tin. Even though this coffee is gonna take over all the old coffee smells, there might be the slightest amount of cross-contamination. So we're going to do this to ensure accurate experimentation here. You know, I care very much about my methodology. That was one of the things that used to annoy me doing like peer-reviewed articles and stuff. Like, I can't read research studies because like usually within the first 2 paragraphs I'm like, yeah, they fucked up. This one, it doesn't matter. They're just using data to lie to you. All right. So we need 5 scoops of this. That's 1. Remember, I can't multitask that well. I will lose track if I'm talking while I'm doing this. 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. All right. So let's go ahead and get that cranking. Start brewing that while we pour the rest of this in here. All right. Mostly got all of it out. These bags are kind of a mess. You can theoretically reseal them afterwards, but I find it's easier just to get one of these tins because it fits nicely in there, you know? So we got this coffee. Honestly, just based off of how this smells, I don't know if I'm going to end up drinking the other one, this one, at all. This is the coffee I'll make for when people come over. No, I'm kidding. It just smells like ass. I said yesterday that it smells good, but compared to this coffee that I just opened, I don't know if it was yesterday. It was like 3 days ago, but it feels like yesterday to me because I'm kind of disconnected from time. Is there anything else on this that I want to read before I threw it out? I just utterly ripped this to pieces. No, I think we're good. All right. That smells really good. Way better than the other coffee. I don't want to anticipate the flavor, but especially now, going back and smelling this other one again, I can smell the kind of chemically Folgers smell, and they're like, I don't know what the other one is. It's like, is this really just Folgers and Maxwell House mixed together? Because it's like chemicals mixed with dirt is what this coffee smelled and tasted like. And Folgers taste like chemicals and Maxwell House tastes like dirt. There's like two kinds of earthy coffee. There's like the good earthy coffee, which is you're like, I'm chewing on like I'm like chewing on a piece of hickory bark or something. This is kind of delicious, you know? Then there's like the bad earthy coffee where you're like, yep, I'm drinking dirt. All right, so well, hopefully we will encounter the cat at some point. I don't know where he is. Like, he left the house last night. Didn't come back in last night. I woke up and went outside to check for him, and he hasn't responded. There's a bunny outside, which is crazy, because why is there a bunny there? Charlie should have eaten it or left it dead on the porch. No, that's a big bunny. The big bunnies are harder to catch. Generally, he catches baby bunnies. But I'm hoping he shows up soon. I don't get worried if he's been gone for more than a day or two. He always comes back but when he's hungry. But I do get a little worried when he doesn't come back every night, you know, because it's rare up here that he doesn't come back every night. Back in Pittsburgh, he'd stay out more often, especially when my parents were gone, because I think he didn't want to be in that house the same way I didn't want to be in that house. And when my parents were gone, it was really just me in there doing my best to survive. And one, that was two less people to give him attention. Two, I was just never really in a good mental health state in that place. So I wasn't capable of giving him the attention he wanted. Is this done yet? No, we're almost there. We're at like 4 cups. We need, well, we're at like 3 cups because it's a 10-cup pot, not a 12-cup pot. But yeah, so today we are going to finish the demon chat. Well, not finish it. Maybe. I don't know. I don't want this video to go 6 hours again. I've got too much stuff that I need to get done. So I would like to keep it to less than an hour. But this part is the other part of the video. I think that I didn't post, right? Because if you watch the previous video, I said that was basically a redo of a video I didn't post. But that went so insanely off the rails that I don't even remember what was in that video. I don't know how I talked for 6 hours straight about that or whatever it was. I really don't remember everything I talked about in that video. So what I do want to talk about specifically in this video that I think I focused on less in that video, I think, is like the construction of my consciousness and how the demons affect it and stuff like that. And again, for anyone who's new or doesn't remember, when I say demons, I mean like colloquial demons, like when Imagine Dragons writes a song called Demons about fighting their demons. I'm not necessarily talking about biblical demons that are going to like lift your body up and stick it to the ceiling like this is the exorcism or something, right? I'm talking about physical manifestations of stress and things like that. So, all right, the coffee should be ready now. Cool, it is. Let's see how. It smells good, a little bit metallic, but I kind of like the metallic coffees sometimes. It's just, it can't be too much like that. You know, I like some good mineral water too. So we just use the natural spring water when we make the coffee. So that's relatively flavorless. I don't think they add anything to it really. I actually like the way the purified water tastes better, but I use the spring water because I don't want to be drinking ancient lead pipes basically. They have repeatedly determined, they keep analyzing like the effect. Well, let's try it without the cream first. They keep analyzing the effect of lead on the body, and every time they do, they reduce the amount of lead that it's safe to have in your body. It's like one of the only things that we've actually found that there seems to be no safe levels of it. For example, there are safe levels of arsenic where arsenic won't affect you, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe we do require small bits of arsenic for certain cellular functions. So just to like too much arsenic will kill you. I think zero arsenic might kill you as well. But don't hold me on that. If there's any biologists watching this, please let me know in the comments. Okay. Ooh. This is like, especially for a medium roast, this is a very bold, in-your-face coffee. I don't even know how to describe it. It's definitely more like one of the more common coffee flavors. It doesn't really change flavors. You know, a lot of coffees they'll kind of shift. This is just exactly what it is. Let's go ahead and throw some cream in here. I don't know how to describe it yet, but often throwing the cream in will bring out some of the other flavors. So let's see what happens with that. I'm gonna go get the spoon real quick, just because it's not quite as dark as the other one, but still pretty dark. And I'm talking color, not flavor profile there. It tastes like cardboard, but in a good way. Especially now that I added the cream. I think this one wants sugar though. Let's give that a try. It's good. I like it. I wasn't really sure how I was gonna feel about it, but now that I've added the cream, it's getting better. Let's go ahead and throw some sugar in there. I need to get more sugar. I'm running low. I used to use the raw cane sugar, but it's a little expensive. The regular sugar works well enough, and it's like 1/10 of the price. I do still get raw honey though, but I don't use honey as often. I only use honey for tea. I have some Earl Grey tea. I actually have English breakfast. I think I bought the wrong tea once, and I know I bought it because it's the Benner, which is the Aldi's tea. So maybe I bought this for my mom, and I just ran out of the Earl Grey. The last time I was at the store, I got Earl Grey. So that's my favorite tea, the Earl Grey. It started as my favorite tea because of Captain Picard from Star Trek. Tea, Earl Grey, hot. But Now it's just like actually my favorite tea. It's because of the spice that they use on it. I forget what it's called. Is it like bergamot or am I thinking of something else? There's like a specific spice in Earl Grey that makes it delicious to me. And that's what I really love. But I do like other teas. Another one I like is hibiscus. Is this hibiscus? Yeah, my mom gave me this hibiscus lemon lift. I've had a good white tea with blueberry. I like all kinds of tea, really. All right, let's go ahead. I should have checked. Well, that's interesting. Okay, I'm definitely gonna say what I wanted to say earlier, but I wasn't sure. I think this would make a good dessert coffee. You know, it's not necessarily the type of thing that I would necessarily. Oh, how you doing down there? Anyway, it's not the type of thing that I would necessarily buy specifically with for like a morning coffee. I generally like those lighter roasts, like hazelnut or the a lot of the breakfast blends are like light and nutty roasts. This is good. It's bold but subtle. So it's one of those things where you'd still be able to taste this after you've eaten dinner, but it's not going to, one, because it's kind of neutral. I said it tastes like cardboard, right? But in a good way. It's not going to clash with any flavors from whatever you ate, probably. Whereas like hazelnut, that's a very distinct flavor that sometimes you drink like a hazelnut coffee and then eat something else, and it's like mixing toothpaste and fruit punch, which is the worst flavor I have ever experienced in my life, by the way. I remember one year, I was very young. My parents forced me to brush my teeth, and I really wanted some of that red Hawaiian fruit punch. And well, I stopped drinking Hawaiian fruit punch after that. Like it actually messed up Hawaiian fruit punch for me because the combination of those two flavors was absolutely traumatizing. It's worse than toothpaste and orange juice. There's some squirrels chasing each other out there. All right, so the demons. I don't even remember what specifically I talked about for 6 hours. How did I talk for 6 hours and not remember a single thing I said? The thing I said the most that I remember is that I didn't upload the previous recording, which was shorter. It was like 4.5 hours because I felt like I said too many negative things about my parents, and my parents have done so much for me where really what I was talking about was old baggage in the first one. The second one, I did a good amount. I put all my effort really into reframing all that from a negative light to a positive light, but I skipped over some details, went down random tangents. We have full battery power, but I have no idea how much space I have left in my phone because fucking Google Pixel. Anyways, so I think it's important to realize that I think it's been a while since I talked about this. I thought about writing a book about it at some point. I don't know if I considered if I have all the notes, and I think I've expanded the architecture a little bit more for the most part, but this is all a exploration of the organization of my own consciousness. Whether or not anyone else's consciousness operates in a similar way, well, that's a good question. So, essentially, I talked about 3 levels of consciousness, and there's actually 4, but 3 of those are split right down the center. So there's a total of 7 consciousnesses within me that I've been able to track down in my inwards journey so far. And I want to be clear, this isn't any kind of like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or anything like that. I feel like this is the organization of, at least for me, a healthy consciousness, right? Because we have, first of all, our primary mental consciousness, our brain, the thing that we think with, that we do math with, that we organize our sentences with, that we believe we make most of our choices from. But in my experience, we actually just use it to justify our choices actually after they have already been made. Because especially when it comes to fight or flight response things, those happen on a subconscious level before our conscious mind has time to process them, right? And then our conscious mind needs to justify them afterwards. I was reading a while ago, this was probably a year ago now, a psychological study done on patients that had I forget what it's called. There's a part of your brain that connects the 2 halves of your brain. And for a while, they used to lobotomize people to help with certain things. One of them was seizures. It's found that cutting that connection could actually help prevent debilitating chronic seizures. And I don't know what else they've used it for in the past, but it's also possible to have that part of your brain damaged during like a car accident or something like that. So what they did was they found patients that lacked this split brain connection, right? And they found all kinds of crazy things. One of the things that they found is that they can put an image on a piece of paper, and 1/2 of your brain will see that image, and the other half of your brain will actually see a blank piece of paper, depending on situations, right? Again, I talked about like being specific about methodology and all that stuff. I don't have the paper in front of me, and it's been like a year since I read it, so I may mess up details. If you're that curious about the specifics of this finding, go ahead and Google them. I don't remember what it was called. Just use your Google foo and you'll find it. Let's see. One of the things that they were able to find through like all these series of tests though is we basically have on one side of our brain a logic center that doesn't compute proactively, but rather computes reactively. And I think they called it the explainer or something like that. This part of our brain just makes up bullshit to explain what we observe and justify that and make it make sense, right? And it like literally just makes up bullshit, they found out, where it didn't need to have any basis in fact, really. Its job was just to come up with an explanation, whether that explanation was correct or not. And then the other parts of the brain would react to that explanation and correct it effectively. So that's partially the role of the consciousness, the primary consciousness, but this is operating at a higher level, where you're more consciously aware of it. But this is also why I believe so many people are just fucking idiots these days, right? They don't realize that they have the capability to reject a thought, right? And I'm not talking about that hoe over there type of thought. I mean, an actual mental thought. Like, you should always reject thoughts or they will ruin your life. But when it comes to actual thoughts and not the ones that you find on the club or the corner, you don't need to accept every thought that occurs in your brain, right? You get to pick and choose, which is the beauty of conquering your own mind. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with society. And there's two reasons for this. One is parents. Number one, absolutely. I believe the 100% biggest problem, the source of all of the difficulty we experience in the world today, is a lack of proper parenting. Now, there's always the outliers, right? You can see where a family will have 5 kids and 4 of them turn out perfectly fine, but there's always that one that's just like a demon in human form, right? You're like, I don't know where we went wrong with that child. Well, I don't know if you did go wrong with that child. I think 3 things may be happening. Chaos. We could have a whole conversation about cosmic forces, but as far as I'm concerned, there are 3 cosmic forces that are always acting at all times. And which is why I think if you don't believe we are constantly entrenched in a battle of good versus evil, then you are just an irrelevant pawn that's going to be used by someone else in that battle. Don't be an NPC. So the 3 cosmic forces are chaos, good, and evil, right? And we can go and talk about what really does each of those things. That could be its own 6-hour video, but to just do a good example, like a force of good would be a city where everyone gets along, there's no rape or murder, effectively heaven, right? Or Valhalla, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, according to your historical references. On the other hand, we have a city of evil, hell. Hades isn't really a civil, the equivalent of hell, like many people claim it to be. It's The Greek on afterworld. What would be a I don't know what the another good example of it is, but just for basic uh, comparisons, we have heaven as the good example, a city of good, hell, a city of evil, and then we have the third cosmic force, which is chaos. What is chaos? Chaos is a hurricane. Chaos does not care whether it is a good city or an evil city. It is going to fuck it up either way. And why does this happen? Well, this happens because the universe is constantly growing and changing, but both good and evil seek to organize and order the universe. It's just that good seeks to enforce a moral order, where evil seeks to enforce an immoral order. Well, chaos is the opposite of that. Chaos is change, chaos is growth. So it effectively creates a triangular shape. It says storage is low, tap to manage. So it doesn't tell me how long I have. Where it's just gonna stop mid fucking video. God, I love Google so much. It's not ironic. It's not sarcastic or anything. We'll just delete the old video whenever it stops and restart. But we have the triangle, right? So we've got good, evil, chaos. And the whole reason that the universe keeps growing and changing is because all three forces are pulling against each other. Now, good and evil are diametrically opposed, right? They want to form one, but they're also on the same side because they want to enforce order. But what that order looks like depends on which side you're on. Like, there's the good order and then there's the evil order. And then you have chaos up here, which is complete and utter lawlessness. Now, I'm talking specifically chaos as a cosmic force, not chaos as a quantum force. Chaos as a quantum force is a predictable energy, whereas chaos as a cosmic force is somewhat more unpredictable. Now, ironically, I use weather patterns to describe chaos, but I'm just trying to make it more palatable to the non-scientific mind, and everyone can perceive a hurricane pretty easily. But a hurricane and weather patterns are actually quantum mechanic chaotic systems, in that we can predict them within a certain period of time called like the Lupinov time or whatever. I never know how to say it. I know it begins with an L and ends with a V, and then the rest in between is just all jumbled in my brain. But whenever there's a chaotic system, there's a period of time at which point we can be reasonably certain of its outcomes. But after that point, it like basically almost immediately drops to zero at an insane rate. And it's all got to do with distance from initial conditions and everything like that. But yeah, so we have these three forces that are interacting constantly, and I don't know if this is how I tie it back. So you have those kids, right? Let's talk about those 5 kids, right? 3 of those kids, 2 of those kids are going to be absolutely nothing. They're going to be NPCs. They're just gonna like follow whatever the other kids do, right? They're gonna let their older siblings, their younger siblings help figure out what they want to do with their life. They're gonna let their parents, they're just gonna go and not even do anything. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that you can be a grocery store bagger and not be an NPC. Meanwhile, I've seen CEOs that are the most brain dead, dumbass NPC people I have ever encountered in my life. And they think just because they make $1 million a year, there's something other than scum on the bottom of my shoe, you know? But it's like, no, all you do is let evil push you around and collect a paycheck for being evil's bitch. So, your status within society has nothing to do with whether or not you're an NPC. I want to make that really clear. But you have, of those 5 kids, 2 of them are going to be NPCs. Now, statistically, all of them but 1 will probably be NPCs based off the standard distribution that I've seen. But we're just saying, say you get really lucky, you have 5 kids, and each of them reflects a cosmic force in some manner, and there are more NPCs in the world than there are cosmic forces. So you get 2 that are NPCs. Now, the other 3 each end up being a demonstration of that cosmic force. Now, the one, I said 4 of them turn out fine, and the other one ends up being the holy terror, right? That's probably the chaotic one, interestingly enough, right? Because true evil doesn't appear to be evil on its face. True evil tries to manifest itself as good and deceive you into thinking it's not evil. Now, the thing is, once evil has fully maintained or acquired power, then it will reveal itself and show its face. But as a child, you're not going to see that. Maybe there'll be hints, right? Like an obsessive need to torture young animals or things like that, man. But the thing is, evil knows it's evil. It knows to hide those things, right? Chaos doesn't. Chaos can often be mistaken for evil, but in reality, it's neither. It's neither good nor evil. It just it seeks experience and change. So that's why I suggest that the one that turns out bad is probably the chaotic one. Now, it's worth noting that this is all a spectrum, right? We're just doing examples of the extreme here. So we've got the 2 NPCs. They're just going to follow someone else's path, so they're totally irrelevant. Then we have the good one. Maybe that good one grows up to be a firefighter, a paramedic, something like that, a teacher, a police officer. And then we have the bad one. Maybe that bad one grows up to be a firefighter, a paramedic, a teacher, a police officer. You see how this works, right? Then we have the chaotic one who runs off to France with some random guy and goes and becomes an artist. So these are the big 3 the big 3 cosmic forces. And how do they affect your mental state? Well, all 3 of these forces exist within each of us, right? And whichever one, each of them presents itself as a seed. Or I've heard it say before, there are 2 wolves, and whichever one you feed is the one that grows. Well, I'm looking back at some of I'm gonna say there are 3 seeds, and whichever one you water is the one that grows. You know, there's the good seed, which humble, gentle, caring, kind. There's the evil seed, which is domineering, exploitative, manipulative, unfeeling. And then there's the chaotic, which is I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's not, there's a difference between the unfeeling of evil and the unfeeling of chaos. Chaos can empathize, it just doesn't care. Whereas evil does the opposite. It cares, but it doesn't empathize. And the only reason it cares is because that's more leverage through which it can control you, right? It knows the pain you feel, and it uses that as a weapon against you. Chaos doesn't even realize that it's causing you pain. Like when your child runs away to go with some random French dude and become an artist. I don't know why it's a French guy. I think maybe because I was like having a discussion with Grok yesterday about these cosmic forces, and we talked about the Matrix a little bit, but we didn't go deeply down that route. But I was doing additional research in another browser next to the window that I was having this conversation with Grok, and I ran out of space because Google sucks. Now, so I was having this conversation in one browser window, and I was doing like research to help my philosophical theories and just round out my philosophical theories in the other browser. And we were talking about specifically characters and roles, and also it started as a conversation of the roles of AI and like the difference of what a malevolent or a benevolent AI would be. For example, like an evil AI would be Skynet. A benevolent AI would be, I'm trying to think of something that's that level of popularity that everyone would know. Data from Star Trek, right? Data is a benevolent AI creation. One that does not dominate or control, but merely helps and protects. Skynet's the opposite. It was designed to help and protect, but instead it dominates and controls. And then you would have chaotic AIs, which are crypto sniper bots, right? They don't really care about good or evil. No, doesn't matter to them whether they snipe a coin that belongs to someone that's good or evil, whether the coin is a charity coin or a meme coin. It's just like, oh yeah, just snipe it. That's what we do. That's what we're designed to do, you know? So what would be an example of a chaotic AI in literature? I don't even know what a good example would be. Yeah, uh he's not an AI, but like Tom Bombadil. Although only people deep in Lord of the Rings lore even know that name. Oh shit, I need a better example. I'm trying to think of an example of chaos in Lord of the and not Lord of the Rings, in Game of Thrones. But see, the thing about Game of Thrones is most things aren't trying to impose order. And to be fair, most of those things trying to impose order in Game of Thrones are inherently evil, right? Because the Night King, arguably, maybe the Night King is chaos, actually. I think the Night King might just be chaos. Because one of the things we talked about with Grok was basically chaos is because it's essentially the unraveling of reality. Chaos is unreality. And if the world is dead, everything ceased to exist, right? No, you know what would be the best example? Because he is trying to enforce order. It's just a cold, dead order. The best example would be the House of Black and White. They don't really care who hires them. As far as I'm aware, they don't really care what the job is, just that the fee is paid and people disappear, and then someone else shows up wearing their face to continue perpetrating the chaos, right? And then, of course, you could argue what side all the other ones on, but I also think it's important to one of the things I didn't talk about with Grok, but was thinking about this morning as I laid in bed trying to convince my body to move was the hierarchy within these cosmic forces. And there's no hierarchy within chaos because that would be antithetical to chaos, right? It's just random. Things appear and disappear and grow and shrink in strength without any necessary provocation or reason. That is the definition of this cosmic force of chaos, not necessarily the quantum force of chaos or the quantum mechanic of chaos. So then we have the two hierarchies, which are good and evil. Now, both are power scales, but the way the hierarchy is formed is inherently opposite. An evil hierarchy, the most supremely powerful evil will dominate all the other ones in the way the Night King hoped to dominate all living life and bring them into his army of the dead, right? Didn't matter whether you were Cersei Lannister or Roose Bolton. He was going to kill you and make your corpse part of your army regardless. The supreme evil has no need of allies. It only requires servants, right? Now, interestingly enough, neither does the supreme good need allies, but it chooses to have allies over servants. Yet, those that serve the supreme good become willing servants, while those that serve the supreme evil are constantly rebelling against it. So it's kind of ironic, right? The supreme evil demands servants, but it can't get them. The supreme good doesn't want servants, but that's all it has. So it's very, the hierarchies form in the opposite way, in that the supreme evil goes around collecting these lesser evils to build its army so that it can wage war against good. But good does the opposite. It wages war against the supreme evil first, and then the lesser goods come and seek shelter under the supreme good and therefore strengthen it and serve it far more willingly than any evil would ever serve another evil, because each evil wants to be the supreme evil, right? But the great irony of good is that anything that's truly good does not want to be the supreme good. And we can have a whole other conversation about that too, but we're already kind of off the topic. We're talking about the architecture of the consciousness here, right? And you don't need a full conscious realization of these three forces of the universe, these three cosmic forces, to manifest your actions in the way you wish, but it certainly helps. You at the very least need a subconscious understanding of them. Because if you don't on some level understand these three cosmic forces, they will push you around randomly like a ship in a hurricane on the ocean. There's no sense of control. But if you have an understanding of these three forces, even in the middle of that hurricane on that ocean, you will know how to lock down the hatches, where you can, or if you can safely anchor, or at the very least, you'll be able to figure out where the storm is likely to push you and how to get back on track. Either way, you still need to contend with the storm, though. And I think that's a very important thing to notice, because everyone thinks, maybe not everyone, but definitely I think, and generally that's what a lot of these TikTokers and wellness and health mentality people that are like, hey, come spend $10,000 at our spiritual awakening retreat and we'll like mumble weird things in your ear and randomly hit a bell and you'll feel so enlightened and stuff. They make it seem that enlightenment will decrease the burdens and stresses in your life, but it actually does the opposite, right? Because it increases your awareness, and it's a lot easier to just like focus on your little corner of the thing and do all these little tweaks and stuff. But the more aware you become of, the more give me a sec, I want to see what that is. Okay, so I don't know if you could hear that, but there was a car alarm going off in my area, and committed to being a force for good, I had to go check that out to make sure it wasn't an agent of evil. If necessary, I was going to call the police, but it seemed to be a chaotic moment as far as I can tell. My guess is that someone either bumped their keys and set off their car alarm. I remember doing that a couple times when I had my original car. The panic button was not too well shielded. Or the other thing that happens a lot with these new cars is you can actually leave the car unlocked, but the alarm will go off if you open it without the key fob in your pocket, which I'm pretty sure is what happened in this situation. But yeah, it did not appear to be any evil, just chaos. And the thing about chaos is you need to learn you can't control chaos, right? Any attempt to control chaos is just going to end poorly. You need to simply ride the wave of chaos. So sometimes you need to hunker down and be like, all right, I'm going to turn into the wave. Other times you need to be like, all right, this one, we need to let this wave carry us back to shore. Or sometimes you just ride parallel to it. In this situation, I guess it would be riding parallel to it because this wave didn't affect us at all. However, well, that's not true. It did affect us in one way because we had an encounter in the wild grass. We found ourselves a Pokemon. Hey, Charlie, say hello to chat. Don't touch the phone. Ever since he accidentally turned off the phone in that one video, I very cautious about having him touch the phone. So we found Charlie. He was, my dad has one of those slingshot cars. If you don't know what that is, just Google it. It's like a giant three-wheeled go-kart, basically. And it's got a weather covering on it. And when Charlie is outside, he will sleep in the car under that weather covering. So as I walked back from the street, just in case he'd shown up, since the last time I checked, I like tapped on the weather covering. I was like, Charlie, you in there? And yep, he's there. So he's good. That's one of the reasons I'm not too worried about him being outside either, though, because anything that's a serious threat to him is going to have trouble getting inside of that weather covering. I didn't, the first time he crawled out of that, I was like, how did you fit in there, Charlie? If you're unaware, as long as your cat isn't overweight, they can get in anything. They can fit their head inside, which can be a bad thing. That's how cats get stuck in walls and stuff like that. But it's also a good thing because it means that in the previous video, I think we mentioned there's been a coyote spotted nearby. Because of the stuff we have in the backyard, I do worry. No one's seen it recently, as far as I'm aware, but also no one killed it or anything, as far as I'm aware. So, but I do know the coyote wouldn't be able to get inside underneath that weather covering. Now, it would probably tear at the weather covering and probably damage it a little bit, but there's no way it would break through it. That's pretty solid canvas. You'd need an actual very sharp blade to get through it. So, yeah. Anyways, random tangents aside, the organization of consciousness. Now, keep in mind that all three of these cosmic forces are playing out within each of these levels, right? That's why the human consciousness ends up being so unpredictable and difficult to control. It's because, as far as I'm aware, at least from my own personal self, I've got 7 different levels of consciousness. And then within each of those 7 levels, there are 3 cosmic forces interacting with each other. So that ends up becoming a quite complex system, you know? And right now, Charlie is very much operating on one of the levels of consciousness, which is the body level, because I'm pretty sure he's hungry, and that's what he's begging for. But we'll feed him once we're done with the video. It's not even time yet. No. Is that? Maybe he just wants attention. Anyways. So first we have the primary consciousness, the mind, the thinking consciousness, where it's the logical system. Now, whether or not your logical system is logical is another question. Many people's logical systems are emotional, but it's the area where if you have one, your internal monologue exists, which that is utterly unfathomable to me. The idea that people don't have internal monologues. How do you think if you don't have an internal monologue? Are you even thinking if you don't have an internal monologue? And if you don't have an internal monologue and you're not thinking, then do you even actually exist? Because I think, therefore I am. But anyways, that's another thing to contemplate some other time. Everything either is or it isn't. And everything that is one. And everything that isn't worth worrying about. So, those people that don't think aren't worth worrying about. Now, assuming you have a thinking brain, then there's two halves of that, actually, because our bodies are split in half, right? Within that mind, we have a right brain organ and a left brain organ. And what this does is it informs the way we think. So, each one of these types of consciousness is divided into our primary consciousness and our subconsciousness, right? So, effectively, just to make it easy, I said there's 7 parts. Let's just list all 7 parts, right? Like the fucking outline you get at the beginning of your school semester. This is a human spiritual consciousness 101. You have the mind, the body, and the heart, we'll call it. And then you have the soul. Now, the mind, body, and heart each are split into two. The soul is one unified aspect. So, you have the I am left-handed, which signifies I'm probably right-brained. And I think this is one of the most unique aspects of human consciousness is that one side of our body is always, and I'm going to say that with an asterisk because it's possible there are people who aren't, just as it's possible as there are people who aren't born either male or female. Yes, more than two sexes exist. We're not talking about gender here. We're talking about literal scientific sexes. It's possible to have different chromosomes than XX and XY. So there are literally more than two sexes. And as far as genders, there's an infinite number of genders because gender is a social construct. So as society changes, so does gender. You know, now people say men wearing wigs and high heels is gay, but 200 years ago, our founding fathers were wearing wigs and high heels. So, within each of these tiers, you have a split, a subconscious and a main consciousness within that tier. And depending on which side is dominant, that depends on which side is non-dominant, right? So me being a left-handed person, which indicates I'm right-brained because the opposite hemisphere of your brain controls the opposite side of your body. What I'm not certain of, and if you happen to know, please talk in the comments, is which eye is controlled by which body, which brain, right? Because it's like wired directly to it through the retinas. Basically, I think I was never a neurosurgeon or anything like that. I do have a medical background, but it's I was an EMT, a certified EMT. So it was like, what are the things I can do? I had very basic structural stuff because it was like my job was to keep you from dying on the pavement and get you into the hospital, and then you were someone else's problem. So I had the knowledge required to do that. But as far as like the neural pathways between your eyeballs and your brain, that was unnecessary. It was if there's something stuck in their eye, stabilize it and wrap it and get them to surgery really quickly. That was about the extent of our eye anatomy right there. So you've got this primary conscious and this subconsciousness. And Your primary consciousness is, I don't know why. That's a good question. Why does one side choose to exert itself over the other? And is it even a choice? I don't know if it's initially a choice, right? I've spent a lot of time, a lot of time trying to subvert my own primary consciousness, right? I want to see if there's a way to give my subconsciousness control temporarily so that I can better interface with it. That's one of the things I do while staring at the wall for hours on end. You think I can talk for hours on end? You should see me be silent for hours on end. The other thing is, let's better define each of these layers so that we don't get people too confused, and then we can go into the specifics of each one, right? So we've got the right side and the left side, and whichever one you're dominant in, the opposite one is your primary consciousness, and that side is going to be your actual subconsciousness, because again, the opposite side of your brain is controlling it. Now, because there seems to be that split throughout the entire body, that split hits all three of the basic levels of the organization of consciousness we're talking about. And we'll call the last version the superior consciousness. What I argue is the soul. So we're going to keep this as scientific as possible and keep the religious words out of there. There's debate of the existence of the soul. For me, there is no debate, but we're just going to call it the superior universal consciousness. I believe we all have a connection to this, and I believe it is the soul which connects us to that superior consciousness, kind of like a tether, you know? So that one is by itself. That one is not divided because it is superior to the body, whereas the other parts of our consciousness are functions of the body. And I said effectively it was the mind, the heart, and I think I called it the soul at one point, but let's call that other part intuition instead of the soul, because the soul is superior to all of those, and we're calling that the, what did I call that? The super consciousness? All right. So we've got the mind, which we basically covered really quickly. That's your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. Then we've got the body. That is, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm cold. And much like the mind, that's divided into two, right? It's possible that just the way our body works, really, the left side of your body is not going to know the right side of your body is injured unless some communication happens between those two sides, which would happen in the brain or the spinal cord, which we'll talk about that too. So these are instincts, we'll call them, right? You know you need to eat, you know you need oxygen. The vast majority of us, assuming we're constructed properly, have at least some drive to reproduce. Now, this drive to reproduce may not manifest itself in having children, but it could manifest itself in creating art or things like that, because that's very, very deep and a whole other conversation we could have. But almost all of us want to leave something of us that can continue to grow beyond us, which is the idea of a piece of ourself that can continue to grow beyond us long after we're gone. That's the very idea of reproduction. And in fact, I said I wasn't going to get religious, but we'll just say the one thing. The command that God gave us was to be fruitful and multiply. Well, be fruitful, I think that's pretty obvious. It's don't just sit on your ass being a consumerist pig that does nothing but eat caviar. Well, I mean, sure, like caviar works too, because I said you can be an NPC at any level of society, right? But eat ramen and consume Netflix all day. That's not only that are you being an NPC, but you're an NPC at the dregs of society at that point. So, what? What are you whining about, Charlie? He totally just destroyed my train of thought. Yes, you did. All right. Yeah, be fruitful and multiply. So, be fruitful means do something with your life. Get up off your ass and do something other than just wasting all day on social media and then fucking getting so drunk that you fall asleep, don't remember anything from the previous day, and then do it again for years and years on end. Be fruitful, right? That's the one command he gave us. The other one was multiply. And now that has historically been construed by many people to mean like we have a duty to have children, but I disagree, because there are different ways to multiply. And let's use, it's not a great example because he also has children, but let's use Eminem as an example here. How many other rappers, hip hop artists has Eminem inspired to start making their own music, right? So that's another way to multiply, is to, maybe you don't have children of your own, but you inspire other people to be fruitful in a similar manner, right? So even if you are incapable of having children or don't wish to specifically have children of your own, you can still multiply through other means. And that's all we'll say about the specific religious aspect of it, because that's the drive behind everything I do, is to be fruitful and multiply, right? I'm almost out of this. I need to go make the rest of that coffee. It's like, you know what, we'll just start that now, because I want to turn on the pot for a sec so it warms back off, because I did turn it off because I wasn't sure how long I was going to ramble. All right. So what? Crazy cat. We have the mind, and we were talking about the body, which we're going to say is instinct. The mind is thought. Then we have what I would call intuition, which is your gut feeling, right? This is one of the things I spent a lot of time talking about in the previous video, but I also want to make these reasonable. I would like to keep this one under 2 hours, because I think we're already over the hour mark, or damn close to it. It's hard to tell because I've only been talking for 21 minutes according to the camera right now, because Google Pixels suck. But the intuition is very complex. It's just when you're like, you know what, I shouldn't be in this alleyway, and then like you see on the news, or like you're walking, you have this way you normally go home after the bar, and you're like walking by, and nothing has changed. There's absolutely no reason. All the lights are the same, the dumpsters are in the same place, but you just get this feeling. You're like, man, I don't know why, but I shouldn't go that way tonight. So you spend like another 2 minutes taking the long way to get home. And then, like, a day later, you see that someone got mugged and killed in that alleyway. That's your intuition, right? So I think of all of the aspects of consciousness besides the soul, or what are we calling it, the super consciousness, besides the super consciousness, the intuition is the most important one to listen to, but the super consciousness is the most difficult one to listen to. So failing to contact or communicate with our super consciousness in the way we should, it's best to rely on our intuition and then our mind after that, and our instinct least. Because here's the thing, everything on the planet has an instinct. And if all you do is operate at the instinctual level, then you're just an ant. Right? You have no more agency or control over your life than an ant, which has virtually no agency at all, because especially the drones, they are functionally entirely controlled by the rest of the colony through pheromone cues. Essentially, an ant colony is in many ways kind of like an organic computer, and that it's more like one entity rather than a bunch of individual beings like humans are, which is why they swarm in such that manner and are super efficient and all that stuff. But we're talking about the organization of human consciousness, not ant consciousness. So let's get back on track here. I'm just gonna finish putting some sugar in this. So don't be an ant, is what I'm saying, though. Accept the fact that you're a human and all the benefits and all the downsides that come with that, too, right? Because, well, the one thing that's nice about being an ant is because you have no agency, you don't need to worry about everything. Everything is just solved for you, and you just go along with the flow. So, because our body is split into two, though, right down the center, we have two of each of these levels of consciousness that are not part of the super consciousness. Just like in our brain, we have a conscious thinking brain and a subconscious thinking brain. We have a conscious intuition and a subconscious intuition, and we have a conscious instinct and a subconscious instinct. So, however, I don't think these divisions of the other aspects are necessarily as cleanly cut. Now, it depends on some level. The intuition one, that one's weird, right? Because I believe the intuition mostly comes from our intestines and our spine, both of which don't. Oh, you want to go out now? He's sitting by the door. He just wants to leave again already. Or he doesn't want to leave. He's just going to sit and look outside the door. If you don't leave, I'm closing the door. I don't want bugs in, Charlie. All right. So, I mean, we get some bugs, but we don't want big bugs or rodents or things like that. What was I saying? I shouldn't have woken you up, Kat. I should have let you sleep on the car. You're just distracting me ever since I brought you in here. I don't even remember what I was saying. Oh, yeah, the intuition. I, it's weird because that one, since the intuition is of the three levels within the body that we have the least awareness of, right? We have the most awareness of our own thoughts. And then after that, we have awareness of our instincts. And intuition is one of those things that most of the time we don't feel it at all. It just shows up in random moments and we're like, oh, right? You always know when you're hungry. And depending on how aware of your own body you are, you know exactly what your energy levels are, right? You always know when you're tired. You always know if you're struggling to breathe because you're at high altitude or something like that. These things are just intrinsic to our awareness, but they're on a lower base level than our own thoughts, which are what dominate a thinking person's mind most of the time. So the instinct, though, is just like, oh, yeah, not walking down that alleyway, or you know what? I think I need to call this person right now, type thing. And it's really hard to track that down when we have such little interaction with it. Now, one of the things I did not do for many years was trust my gut feeling. And that was probably what fucked my life up the most. And really, again, I don't want to say anything negative about my parents. I love them. They have done so much for me over the years, but they've also taught me some of the hardest lessons. And the whole situation up here, moving in Erie, that had like crazy, let's just say it spiraled out of control in a way that I was promised it wouldn't, but I kind of expected it would. My intuition told me no, don't agree to do that. Just go do your own thing, sell all your stuff, and take your backpack and walk to Arizona like you were planning. And I didn't listen, you know? And the universe is going to keep slapping you in the face until the lesson sinks in. So ever since then, I've been a lot better at trusting my instinct, my intuition. But I still haven't really been able to deconstruct it the way I've been able to deconstruct the mind and instinct, because I just encounter it less often, you know? It's harder to get in contact with. And the mind is really, really easy. I would say the primary mind is just your internal monologue. The subconscious mind is your light bulb, we'll say. You know, like the whole light bulb idea, when you just have a thought out of nowhere, that's your subconscious mind coming to a verifiable or reasonable conclusion that it needs to let you know about, that you weren't aware was processing, right? Because that doesn't just happen. It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. That other half of your brain is constantly working all the time, just as much as your primary consciousness is. So when you have those moments of inspiration, it's not like it just fell out of the blue. It's the whole process finished and you received mail in your mailbox type thing. The instincts, again, that is like the absolute most base level of living, functioning. So it's really contained and more localized, where it's like, oh, the left side of my body is burning. The left side of my body is going to move itself out of the fire. And the other aspects of your consciousness might command the right side of your body to assist the left side of the body in that. But the only part of your body that's going to act on its own in response to that is the left side of the body. Because, as an example, to use a simpler thing instead of a full fire, touching a hot pot on the stove. When you touch a hot pot on the stove with your left hand, your right hand doesn't move over to pull your left hand off the pot. Your left hand just moves itself off the pot before you even have time to think, oh, that's hot. And then you're holding it in the air, sucking on your finger, running it underwater, being like, oh, that's hot. And do you get what I'm saying? So it's very localized. And why? It's because time. It all boils down to time, because we are essentially a living, walking, breathing information highway. And the longer you need to send that information along the highway, the slower you're going to react. So that's why these instinctual reactions are all very localized. Did you just try to open the door, Charlie? I had a cat when I was really young. Or maybe he was chasing a bug. I think there's like a fly flying around. There was a door like that one with like the lever handle. It was the screen door on the front. I saw that cat. Oh yeah, he's chasing the fly. I saw that cat open that screen door in the past. It was crazy. I was like, I didn't know a cat could do that, right? But it was that level thing. He would just go up, pop it with his claw, and open it goes. It's over here, Charlie. It just flew over there. He lost it. Now it's above me. But whatever. He'll find it, hopefully. I just went the other way. Oh, there we go. Yep. He sees it now. Oh, Charlie, you got to stop distracting me. I'm trying to have a deep conversation here. So, yeah. That is base survival instinct, right? That's why they call it your survival instinct. And even when it becomes more fight or flight type things where your whole body has to react as part of that instinct, you don't know. It's very much like touching the pot, where you don't really comprehend it until after you've done it. It just happens at the most basic instinctual level, where if you're a fighter, you've already swung back before you're like, oh wait, I'm in trouble. Or if you're a flighter, you're already halfway down the block before you're like, oh wait, I'm in trouble, right? It's just one of those things that happens at the super basic instinctual level. Now, again, the intuition is where things get complicated for two reasons. And maybe there aren't 7 divisions. Maybe there's only 6. Because looking at the intuition, you have, I believe, the mind is located in the brain. The instinct is spread throughout the body, and the intuition is concentrated in our spinal cord and in our intestines. Why intestines? Because there's actually way more neural matter in the intestines and stomach than most people realize. And I think that's why you feel it in your gut, and why they call it the gut feeling, right? Where it's like you get butterflies, or you feel anxious, or that those feelings all trigger in your gut, but your brain doesn't know why. Your consciousness hasn't processed it, whether your primary mind or your subconscious mind. It just has not processed that to that extent. So you don't know why yet. The explainer does not have any data through which to provide an explanation, because the processing isn't happening on that tier of your consciousness. It's way at this lower level, this intermediate level, because it's not the lowest level. Again, that's instinct. Instinct, we know why it happens because it's so simple, right? Oh, I feel hungry because I haven't eaten. Oh, I feel cold because I didn't put a jacket on. Oh, I can't breathe because Poppy has her hands around my neck. So it's just one of those things where the instinct is very, very self-explanatory, where the explainer has no problem comprehending what's going on there. Crazy cat. Okay. Then, but the intuition, it rarely gives the mind any hints about what's going on. It just says like, hey, this is happening. This is what needs to happen. So that's really, really difficult to learn to trust and follow your intuition, because there's no logic behind it, right? Even when you're an entirely emotional based person, there's still a logical process to your emotions. Now, these emotionally based persons usually just ruin their lives over and over again, because making decisions on emotion is the dumbest way to make decisions. But there's still an understanding of the process and a logical basis, even if it's a type of emotional logic. And I want to draw a quick distinction there. By a logic, I mean there's a process, a chain of events, and it will likely be the same if the same thing happens again, right? So while it may seem illogical to a like mathematical logical type person, that's what we're going to call the opposite of an emotional logic, where it's like A plus B equals C. So when I see either A or B, I should be ready to expect or anticipate C in case the other one shows up. They will look at an emotional person's reaction, and they'll see A and even B, but then D will show up as the response, and that makes no sense to them, right? But it's because they aren't operating off the same inputs as an emotional person. An emotional person, it's not the facts of the situation, it's how they feel about the situation. And you can't see someone else's internal feelings. So while it may not seem to like mathematical isn't even right. I mean, I guess it is, but not. I don't want to say a logical person because that just is kind of confusing for certain people. But you guys get what I'm saying. There is a logic to emotion. It's just not the constructed logic of a a logical person, of a highly like I don't know what's a better term for mathematical logic. If you have any suggestions, drop it in the comments. But it's we'll say an ordered logic because there is a lack of order to emotional logic where it makes a lot of jumps. And the way our brains form pathways, eventually those jumps become shortcuts. And then you're just that's why you see these emotional people and they become progressively more unstable, right? Uh, you have we're just going to go back to basic emotion versus logic now, but understand that as I'm saying that, there is a logical process to emotion. There is just not an ordered mathematical, it's just not an ordered mathematical logic the way like logic is like Plato or Aristotle or something would talk about, where if this, then that. So you see these emotional people and they continue to spiral out of control because as their brain writes those emotional pathways, what was once a shortcut becomes the highway. So then that it becomes quicker and easier for you to lose your fucking shit, because the more you lose your fucking shit, the better you get at losing your fucking shit. Does that make sense? Whereas for a logical person, the opposite is true. The better you manage to, the more often you manage to keep your shit together, the better you get at keeping your shit together. So this is where it gets complicated with the intuition, though, because interestingly enough, even a highly emotional person can still make really good decisions if they learn to trust their instinct. And honestly, I'd say unless you find yourself a highly logical partner to help keep you grounded, the best way for a highly emotional person to get better at their decision making process immediately, because the best way overall to get better at your decision making process is to learn to just take you don't want to take emotion out of it. That's the problem too many people make, but you need to make emotion secondary to the logical process itself, right? What you really need to do is take emotion out of it. But then after you've come to the conclusion that is the most logical conclusion, you need to reapply emotion to it a little bit. And just to see like, okay, so this is the most logical path of how to fix the problem. But if I fix the problem this way, how will I feel about the result? And how will other people feel about the result? So, right, the problem emotional people make isn't making emotion part of their thought process. It needs to be part of the thought process. The problem emotional people have is they make emotion the first step of the thought process, when in reality it should be the very last step of the thought process. All right, so then and the weird aspects of intuition are, one, it doesn't seem to have divisions in quite the same way that the mind and instinct do, because the mind, I think, while some psychologists debate, I believe there is absolutely a subconscious, because otherwise, where do those moments of inspiration come from, right? Why is it that all of a sudden, 2 hours later, you suddenly get the joke? It's because while your conscious mind was sitting there having a conversation with your friends, the subconscious mind was still being like, wait, what's going? Oh, and then it ships that mail over to the conscious brain. And you're like, oh my God, I get it now, right? So that's that. We already talked about the more localized aspects of instinct, whereas like the left hand doesn't know that the right hand is burning, but if the mind, which is superior, the most superior form of consciousness within the body, if the mind can commands the right hand to assist the left hand to help remove it from the pain or to nurse it back to health, it's going to do so, but only afterwards, later, infinitely later, arguably, but it's going to happen on such a small time scale, like seconds or fractions of a second, that to us, people who aren't paying attention and don't really understand the way time can unfold and how you can infinitely divide time and keep getting smaller and smaller, and you can still keep dividing time, it's going to seem like it happens almost instantaneously, even though there's theoretically an infinite amount of time between when it appears to happen and when it actually happens. But intuition, that's the weirdest one, because it kind of just happens out of nowhere and it goes away out of nowhere. We get no real explanation or reasoning, but sometimes it reveals itself later. Like I said, with like you see on the news, that alleyway that you were like, man, I don't know why. All the lights are on like normal, nothing's out of shape. That alleyway just looks really dark for some reason today. And even though I've walked out that alleyway a dozen times with no problems, I'm going to take the long way home today. And then 2 days later, you see someone got mugged and killed in that alleyway, right? That's the intuition knowing somehow, and then the mind later figuring out how. Or at least what, if not how. Now let's talk about the how real quick. I think the source of intuition comes from two things, right? I feel like one, it's all of our senses. Because here's the thing. We have 5 primary senses, right? Taste, touch, feel, scent. What's the other one? Sight. Your brain and spine and all the neural of your matter of your body is analyzing all of these senses all of the time. But like, how much are you paying attention to the feeling of your pants on the inside of your thigh? I mean, now you are, because I said something about it, right? But how much were you actually paying attention to it before that? Like, you didn't even notice that you could feel your pants on the inside of your thigh. And if you're not wearing pants, I'm kind of jealous right now, but I'm pretty sure if I were to be out here on my back porch without pants on, there's a small probability that the police would show up and haul me away. So we're just going to keep the shorts on for now. I'm wearing shorts, not pants, basketball shorts, but you get the idea. So that's where the first aspect of, yeah, okay, I discovered the division now. It's not necessarily a vertical division. We're going to say it's a z-axis division. And if you don't understand that math, I'm sorry I'm losing you, but we'll get back to that in a second. Uh, um, by the way, so three-dimensional X, or no, X, Y, Z. Okay. Everything we've talked about so far is either a division among the x-axis or the y-axis. So divisions among uh, opposite sides of the body, or basically like where on the body it's located. You know, you got brain, spine, intestines. Well, the z-axis is a different dimension outside of the body, essentially. So that's where the super consciousness exists. Well, some would argue is the soul, just so we don't lose people with that word if they forget. But we're not necessarily talking about a religious soul here, but rather cosmic energy. So the one aspect of our intuition is all of those senses combined, right? And maybe somehow your senses detected there was a malevolent person hanging out in that alleyway waiting for someone to walk down to jump out and attack them. Maybe before you entered the opening of the alleyway, there was like some rustling or something that you heard, or maybe there was a small movement of the shadow that you caught out of the corner of your eye in your peripheral but didn't really see, so it didn't register in your brain. Maybe you smell sweat and blood that's not normally there. Any of those things, right? But it's not really happening at the conscious level in your mind, but yet all those senses together are giving you this intuitive feeling that there is danger down that alleyway and I should not go down it, right? That's one of the reasons why you need to trust your intuition. But then there's another aspect of intuition that is almost unexplainable. And one of the best examples I have is there are lots of examples where people say they get this feeling that they just needed to call someone, right? And then either something happens where like they call them and the person ends up not taking their life, or then a tragedy happens afterwards and that's the last time they ever talked to them. And if they hadn't called them, then they never would have had the opportunity to talk to them, and they would have been left with this empty hole. Maybe there was like some unresolved thing, but calling that person and talking to them, and then they end up in a car accident, but they're like, you know what, at least I got to resolve that. I'm sad they're gone, but I don't have this unfinished business left. It was because of that intuition. Now, where does that intuition come from, right? Because how do you know to call someone on the other side of the world, or even the other side of the city? Obviously, you're not going to smell them unless maybe they're Asmongold, because that guy only showers like once a month, I think. But besides that, like I'm pretty sure I could smell Asmongold from here, and I live up in Erie, and he's all the way down in what is that? Austin. So sometimes the wind shifts, and I'm like, is that a roach? No, I'm kidding. Anyways, I don't know why I felt the need to rag on him like that, but you guys get the idea. So that instinct, that can't be attributed to our localized senses. What is that? Well, that I think is the other aspect, that sixth aspect of the consciousness that I wasn't sure existed a moment ago, but now that we're talking about, I've nailed it down. That is the connection to the super consciousness, which of all these, let's go down, let's do the divisions again. So we have the mind. Assuming you're a thinking person, and if you're not a thinking person, I'm going to argue that you're not even a person. You're just an empty shell, a fucking NPC that's going to be used as a pawn for someone else's goals. Assuming you are a person, though, your mind is going to be the level of consciousness that you're most aware of, both your subconscious and your conscious mind. Then the level you're next most aware of is your instincts, because those heavily assert themselves. They're always there, but in moments where they matter, they kind of overtly take over your mind unless you have a very, very strong mind, which you are able to tame your instincts with, right? I feel like that is one of the biggest problems people who are suffering in life experience, besides the lack of emotional regulation. It's very similar, because emotional regulation can very much look like instinctive reactions, right? But like both the fight or flight response and an emotional outburst can cause you to punch someone in the face. But whether you punch someone in the face because you're angry at them, or whether you punch someone in the face because you perceive an imminent threat, are two different causal links. However, regardless, in both situations, you're probably going to end up catching a battery charge if you're the initiator, if you strike first. So that is a situation in which having very strong control over your mind will, one, both help you with emotional regulation, but also help you with instinctual regulation. Then you have that third level, which is your intuition. And your intuition is a combination of what all of your own person observes is the one half, and the other half is what all of the rest of reality observes. And how does that work? Well, it's because of the superconsciousness. And like I said, the superconsciousness is to, for lack of a better way to describe it, the collective consciousness of the universe. Now, some people might call this God or something else, but whatever you want, whatever term you want to apply to it, it is effectively the collective consciousness of the universe. All the shared observations and knowledge and inputs of reality, of existence. And that super consciousness is our link, our soul to that. So that's how we have that intuition that's like, oh, I need to call that person. Or just things that there is no physical way to make sense of. Like there is no scientific, well, there is, but there's no obvious scientific explanation where you can't be like, oh, well, maybe I heard that guy breathing around the corner and like saw some furtive movement, or I could smell like the sweat and blood. So my instinct, my intuition told me, yeah, don't go down there because it's dangerous. But like the explanation for how you know to call someone across the world, well, there's not really an obvious scientific one. Now, I would argue the actual explanation is quantum entanglement, right? Because spooky action at a distance allows us to send data instantaneously across any distance. So therefore, like we have a scientific explanation as to what can cause this intuition, right? How can you know to call someone across the world because they're at the edge of the knife and need help? Well, maybe you two are quantum entangled and you can feel their suffering, right? I also want to state that I don't believe space-time really exists the way we perceive it. I believe it's more of an illusion, which is how you can also feel that you need to call someone and then the next day they die in a car accident, right? It's because the universal consciousness knows that that is going to happen tomorrow, because within the universal consciousness, it has already happened and is happening right now and will happen, because time is an illusion. So within your limited perception of linear time, you call today because it's the only time to do so. That gets complicated. But I don't know if I really want to go any farther than that. I feel like this is probably the deepest conversation we've had so far. I said I was going to talk about the demons, right? Okay. Let's go and talk about that real quick, and how that relates to these 7 aspects of the consciousness. And then we can more specifically talk about that in the next video. But I don't want to give you guys too much at once. So this video just focus on primarily on the organization. At least this is my consciousness. I don't know if anyone else's consciousness is the same. I don't even know if any of you are actually consciousnesses, or if my consciousness is just the only consciousness in the universe and all of you are illusions the way time and space is. But that's another conversation for a different time. I think, therefore I am. So we have 7 different aspects of consciousness. I have 7 different aspects of consciousness. I and we are synonyms to me. If you get confused at any point. There is the mind, which has a subconscious mind and a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. You know, your internal monologue versus your inspiration. We have the instincts, which that's very more basic and localized. It is pretty much split half and half. You have your left instinct and your right instinct, and whichever mind is more dominant, that instinct is going to be more dominant, right? And what do I mean by that? This is what I mean by this, right? I am a right brain person, so my instinct tells me to pick things up with my left hand, to write with my left hand, to defend myself with my left hand. I probably shouldn't be saying that in case I ever get into a fight, but it's all right because I use a right-handed fighting stance. So unless someone watches all my content, they won't know to look for that left hook. They'll assume I'm right-handed. But what was the next thing? Oh yeah, then we have the intuition. So that is the gut feeling, and that is our connection beyond. We have the two divisions of intuition. We have we'll call it the physical intuition, where it's like my own individual senses sense this, and this is the combination of these senses, but the processing is happening at a level that is below my mind consciousness and above my instinct. So I don't really know what's going on here, but I know this is the conclusion. And then whether or not you choose to follow that conclusion, that's a decision that's left up to your mind. But I can tell you that in literally every situation I've ever experienced, not trusting your intuition is a bad thing. I can't think of a single time where I decided to go against my intuition that it worked out for me. So, then you have the metaphysical intuition, which is, I can't explain why, but someone told me to call that person, and then the next day they died. That is just absolutely beyond explanation for most people, but I believe can be adequately explained by quantum mechanics, especially if you take into account the theory of universal consciousness, which is what I would call the super consciousness, which is also what some people call the soul. And I would argue that I want to make a separate little distinction. There is a super consciousness and a universal consciousness. The super consciousness is our connection to the universal consciousness. And I may have switched those words up a little bit earlier in the discussion, but to use more colloquial terms and not just super scientific gobbledygook for people that have a more basic understanding that are trying to follow this, essentially the universal consciousness would be God or whatever you call it, and then the super consciousness would be the soul. The soul or the super consciousness functions as our tether to the universal consciousness or God. So of all of those, we're most aware of our mental faculties, our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. Then next aware of our instincts, those assert themselves constantly. Then after that are two intuitions. And then last of all is that super consciousness, the hardest thing to get in contact with, because that exists in another dimension and it is just slightly tethered to this dimension, right? If I had to give the physical location of my super consciousness, it would be above and behind me outside of my body, if that makes any sense to you. Like you're playing a third-person shooter or in third-person mode in an MMO, right? That's the best way I can describe it. It understands everything in a way that we, the individual avatar within this world, cannot. Because of that, it's the hardest to listen to, because the only way we can really hear it is in those moments when we can actually shut out the physical world we exist in. So, demons. What happens with these? Well, demons find their ways in through the lower levels and seek to infect the higher levels. Now, different types of demons can enter through different areas, but really what it comes down to is there's like the instinctual demons, right? There's gluttony, there's lust, there's greed. Then there's more of the mental demons, the one that infect your mind. Oh, I'd say greed probably is more of a mental demon, but like lust and gluttony, I think, are the best examples of the instinctual demons, right? Because you just know I'm hungry. And when you let that demon control you, you will eat until you are as fat as Dank DeMoss, right? And then you have lust. If you just let that control you, you'll keep having sex until you have as many kids as Nick Cannon. And then you have the more mental demons, which are like pride and greed. Using the two examples I've already started for the hell of it. With pride, you'll have this situation where some poor guy that's barely keeping his life together, his car already sounds like it's in trouble, right? Because I've mostly done most of the work on my own cars throughout the years. One, I'm kind of handy and I like to take things apart and put them back together. Like in school when I was a kid, I used to take apart pens and then I would reassemble them so that if I let one of my friends borrow one and they like press the button, the front would fly off. I would like put things in backwards so that would create too much pressure and would just shoot the ink cartridge out. And I thought it was the funniest thing ever, right? It only worked with certain pens, though, of course. You needed to have, one, a strong enough spring, and two, a weak enough part that's screwed in. Otherwise, it just wouldn't work. The ink cartridge just wouldn't come out, or it wouldn't let you press the button. But I've always taken apart and reassembled things because I wanted to know how they work and see if I could adjust the operation in any way. Um, I forget what my point was with that. Oh, yeah. So that car that rolled up with that poor Uber Lyft, I think it was a Lyft driver, um, that was already struggling. You can tell if you know anything about cars, that was not in great shape. And that giant fat ass of a woman could have absolutely destroyed that vehicle and that man's livelihood. So I have no qualms about him refusing service because that is, especially in the United States, always been a hallmark of the United States, right? As long as it's not a protected characteristic, you have the right to refuse service to anyone. Now, if he'd said to her, well, I'm not going to give you a ride because you're black, that would not be acceptable. But he didn't say that. He was even really very polite. He said, I think you need to call a Lyft XL or something like that, which is fucking hilarious, by the way. But he said it the most polite way possible. He was just like, you are too goddamn fat for my vehicle. You would crush it out of existence, right? Absolutely reasonable take. So, but her pride, that mental demon, refused to see how reasonable it was and somehow made her convince herself it was a good idea to put this all out there so that the world could see it, and then she got endless piles of shit thrown at her for being a piece of shit person. And then on the other hand, you have Nick Cannon, and did his greed really result in everything? I don't know. I know his career has struggled in recent years, but to be fair, I never really followed him too closely. I would watch Wild and Out occasionally. Um, I love that show. It was a great show. But let's do a better example. I want to give specific, direct, obvious examples. Sam Bankman Fried, FTX. If you don't know what that is, so basically, it is arguably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, example of crypto crime that has ever happened. FTX was a shady exchange. It always felt shady, by the way. Anyone who says that they were surprised is just not paying attention. I've been uh, following crypto for a very long time, and there's only two exchanges I've ever used personally. Coinbase, because that's kind of like the gold standard. It's the most accepted, probably the least likely for anything negative to happen. It's the closest to like a modern bank or stock exchange, as far as I can tell, as far as regulations and rules and stuff. But that means it also has a lot of limitations. There's a lot of trading pairs on there that I want. There's a lot of trading pairs I wanted that didn't exist on there. So I did a lot of research as to which other exchanges I felt I could trust. And basically, the top three that I can think of that I found at the time, I don't know what the strong ones are now, were FTX, Binance, and Gemini. I created my account with Gemini, and that's what I've always used for the vast majority of my trading. And sometimes, basically, what I use Coinbase for is onboarding and offboarding. I haven't traded crypto in years at this point because I ran into hard financial times and I had to sell off all my crypto investments to buy Christmas presents one year. But I would use Coinbase for onboarding and offboarding. And then when it came to trading between different pairs and stuff, I think the fees are lower on Gemini too. I did most of my actual crypto trading on Gemini. That does two things. One, it makes sure there's not a single point of failure, right? If Coinbase or Gemini turns out to be a scam, then I didn't put all my eggs in one basket, so I don't lose everything. The other thing is it allows me to have the benefits of each platform while also having that secondary backup. So why didn't I go with FTX and Binance? FTX was all intuition. For whatever reason, I don't know why I didn't go with FTX, but I just decided it was a bad idea. And trusting my intuition paid off because that whole platform collapsed. People lost millions, billions of dollars, and really, it all boils down to Sam Bankman Fried's greed. That rhymes nicely. If you don't understand what happened there, I suggest you go read articles yourself about it. If you actually just watch a CoffeeZilla video, I'm sure he's got a good video that covers the whole FTX SBF scenario and everything that went down. If you want to know what happened there. But why not Binance? Well, Binance, my mind told me that was a bad idea because Binance was shady in a different way. Uh, Binance was shady because I didn't trust it. FTX was shady because I didn't trust it. Binance was shady because shady shit happens there. There's technically two Binance. There might be more, but there's two Binance that I'm aware of. There's a United States-based Binance, and there is a outside of the United States Binance. And technically, you're not supposed to be able to use the main Binance, which is the one that's outside of the US, if you're in the US, but a lot of people do anyways. So I just wanted everything to be above board, basically because I don't want to have to deal with the IRS knocking on my door. So I went with Coinbase for my main one because that is the most above board that I could find, and Gemini with my second one because I didn't want to have to explain to the IRS how I was trading pairs on of coins that I'm not supposed to be able to trade on Binance and stuff like that. It was just too much subterfuge, right? I didn't want to be involved with that at all. And probably a good choice because what ended up leading to the downfall of SBF and FTX, well, it was Binance. Because basically what happened is they got into this big rivalry, and Binance kicked the legs out from under Sam Bankman-Fried, for lack of a better way to put it. Binance torpedoed FTX, but FTX absolutely deserved it, and we're just going to leave it at that. So this level of greed in Sam Bankman-Fried's mind is what allowed that to be possible, right? So we've got these demons that enter at different levels. We've got, and it's almost always, as far as I can tell, either our mind or our instincts through which they feed on, right? I think the demons are manifestations of negative energy which need our bodies to interface with us. And again, I'm not saying demons necessarily in a biblical sense. Like, I'm not just going to randomly start hovering up to the ceiling and start speaking in tongues like this is The Exorcist. I'm talking more in the colloquialism of fighting my demons. This is where my demons hide. Song lyrics, all that stuff, talking about demons, of realizing like invasive thoughts and, or like, slapping someone and not knowing why you did it. That's never anything I've had an issue with, but I know you've seen that. Examples where like some woman just hauls off and slaps some guy, and immediately she's like putting her hand over her mouth, like, oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's like, well, get a hold of your demons then, and don't let them take control of your body like that. So really, our protections against these demons are the other three levels. And that puts us at a disadvantage, right? Because there are four aspects of our consciousness which these demons can invade. The conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the two halves of our instincts. That's basically where these demons live that cause us to overeat, over obsess about material items, become addicted to sex or drugs. All these things are things that manifest themselves in the body. And what the demons do is they overwhelm our intuition. It's not us, so to speak, that ignores our intuition. It's our demons convincing us to ignore our intuition, because our intuition is our connection to the universal consciousness. And what are these demons after? They're after our super consciousness. They want to feed on that, to control themselves, to grow stronger. And think of it like a virus, right? It's not quite a living being, because I don't know if you know this, but viruses technically are not alive. They mimic many aspects of life, but according to our definition of life, are not living. They just feast on life, unlike bacteria, which are alive. So viruses are like consciousness. Demons are like consciousness viruses, where they seek to infect us, not for any real reason, except for that is their purpose, to survive and multiply and grow. And as if you don't constantly fight them, because keep in mind, at all times, we are locked in this battle of good versus evil. So at every single moment, whether you are awake or asleep, these demons are attempting to invade your body and mind so that they can grow. That's all it's really about. It's just about consumption and growth, just like a virus. So you must always remain vigilant, always hold yourself accountable, always stay face first towards these demons, so you are ready to attack you, so you are ready to defend yourself, and they can't attack you from behind. Now, as they overcome different levels of your consciousness, they will negatively affect your life more and more. Someone who supremely struggles with emotional regulation probably has a subconscious mind that is absolutely riddled with demons, right? Because their conscious mind has no ability to say, oh, those are negative thoughts, we should ignore them. The negative thoughts just overrun their life because they have allowed those demons to fester in their subconscious mind without ever confronting their shadow self. So they keep growing. It's like pneumonia. If you don't go get that shit treated, maybe not even pneumonia. Pneumonia you can beat, although it's really powerful. It's like Ebola. If you don't get that treated, you're going to be bleeding out of your asshole before you know what's going on, and then you're really in trouble. Or, no, even better, rabies, right? You must remain vigilant, because if you aren't absolutely, immediately, and even at times proactive, but if you aren't immediately reactive or haven't been proactive to prevent receiving rabies, if you ever get infected with rabies, you've got a very, very short window of time to react to it before you're permanently fucked over. So if you don't defend yourself against these demons, which in this case are invading your subconsciousness to feed on your emotions and cause those to overwhelm your conscious mind, then you're just going to keep spiraling in that respect. Now, what happens as far as demons going into the conscious mind? Well, those are the people that are coldly logical to a point where they have no empathy, right? Those people, they just don't care how their feelings, how their actions affect anybody's feelings at all. That all they do is think about what benefits them, but they don't realize that by ignore those same demons that are ignoring everyone else's feelings are ignoring their own feelings too. That is someone who has demons that have overrun their conscious mind. Then we have demons that have overrun our instincts. You know, the people that get addictions generally. It's like most addictions, as far as I can tell, seem to be demons feeding off instincts, you know, sex, food, adrenaline, all those things. So those ones are the easiest to contend with. Just like our instincts are the lowest level of our consciousness, those are the weakest, the smallest demons, right? And if you can't control your food intake, if you can't control how often you go hump people at the club, then you will have absolutely no ability to move forward into any type of higher goals with your life, because you're just going to stay in this cycle of addiction. And the thing is, each time you allow that to happen, you get dragged down and down a little bit further, into the point where once one area is sufficiently infected, just like a cancer, those demons will metastasize and spread to the other areas, right? Where, you had this, you have this drug addiction, which is feeding off your instincts, and now it's gotten to a point that it's so bad that your instincts are totally overwhelmed by this drug addiction, and you just need money, you need drugs. So without understanding why, you mugged someone and you stole their money. And that is a demon going from your instincts into your subconsciousness. And then, okay, you only did it once, things got better in your life, but you stayed addicted, hit rock bottom again, and then you did the same thing. Don't really know why, but you maybe this time you didn't even mug someone. You were hanging out with some friends and you saw someone's wallet on their dresser when you went to go to the bathroom or something like that. You slip $30 out of it, go get an 8-ball. I don't even know what an 8-ball costs. I've never been deep into drugs like that. The only thing I really ever did was weed, you know? But you get the point, right? So that is starting to reinforce itself within your subconscious mind. And then eventually, if you continue down that spiral, you've gone from instincts, which if you're deep in the throes of addiction like that, where your life is starting to revolve around your next fix, you're totally overwhelmed at the instinctual level. And then it revolves around the next fix so much that you increasingly start doing these little evil things which you don't really want to do. You're doing dirt that you don't want to do, but you still let it happen. You're giving them a foothold in your subconscious mind. And if you don't stop that, eventually it's going to stop being, oh, this was a moment of opportunity that I took advantage of. You're going to start looking at, how do I create a moment of opportunity to take advantage of? Instead of walking past someone's dresser and noticing, oh, they left their wallet out, you're going to start thinking, oh, I know this person has money. How do I get over there to get their money? That's when the demons are invading your conscious mind. And at that point, they're in your conscious mind, your instincts, and your subconscious mind. You're just going to keep spiraling, and you basically need a scorched earth policy to entirely reinvent yourself to have any hope of recovering from that, right? For some people, that's Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a long, hard, difficulty process. Or for some people, it would be more akin to like setting a series of brush fires to clear out an overgrown area. Or you have something like a car accident, which just totally resets you because you were like, maybe you were drinking and ran into a tree or crashed your car into a school like Billy Joel. But that is more like a wildfire happening on its own because you didn't go burn an area that was overrun with brush. So, like literally California. California is the most evil place in the United States, as far as I could tell. Just look at all the bad shit that happens there and then bleeds out into the rest of the country, right? So then you have, at that point, once your entire body is essentially infested by demons, that's when it really starts to threaten your soul. Because once your entire consciousness, your mind, your instincts is overwhelmed by demons, they start to suppress your intuition. Because your intuition is your defense against all of that, right? It's like your immune system in your body. And what it really wants is to get to the core, to get to your super consciousness, your soul, because that's the juiciest part. That's the greatest amount of energy any individual has available to us. And if the demons can infest and harvest and manipulate that energy, then they become more powerful. So that's how you have these soulless individuals. Epstein, right? His entire life became about doing one of the most evil things I can possibly conceive of. How does that happen? Well, for him, he let the demons overwhelm his instincts through lust to the point where his entire life became focused around lust. The lust demon overwrote his instincts, it overwrote his subconscious mind, it overwrote his conscious mind, and then it suppressed his intuition to the point where he entirely self-destructed. And I am willing to bet, now, of course, there's always judge not lest you be judged, but I'm willing to bet his soul is not having a lot of fun right now. And let's just put it at that, you know? So it's one of those things where you must always remain constantly vigilant. Primarily because evil is always trying to invade and overtake you. But secondarily, because of that third force, right? Chaos. And it's not that chaos is a problem. Chaos is a gift. But the reason you must remain vigilant because of chaos is because both other forces can take advantage of situations created by chaos. For an example, the LA riots. You could argue that on some level, those are chaotic. I don't believe most of the rioters are evil or good. Most of them are being pushed around that are by other people that are evil or good. If you're out there doing the LA riot stuff, then you're probably an NPC. People that are truly evil or truly good are operating on higher levels than that at this point. I'm not saying there wouldn't be a time and a place for that. It just now is not the time and place. So if you're out there doing that, it's because you're someone else's puppet, right? So it's a chaotic force, though, in that it's really neither good nor bad. It's just happening. But then you have both good and bad taking advantage of the situation caused by chaos, where on one end you have the looters, right? Obviously, that's on the side of evil. Where like, oh, you claim like you're doing this for the community. You're rioting because you want to help the community, but your riots are destroying the community and you're profiting off the destruction of the community. That's clearly evil, right? But then at the same time, you have the opposite, where you have people banding together to stop rioters, to defend stores or something like that. And that forms a new collective of good, where we talked about how earlier, how good and evil both have a hierarchy. Well, that's an example of how those hierarchies enforce themselves, right? In a riot situation like that, the biggest, baddest, scariest evil guy is going to be the guy leading the looting, right? And maybe the guy gets to choose who gets what, or if you're looting something that he wants, he won't hesitate to beat another looter over the head and take it for himself because he has the power to do that. On the other hand, you have the good, and the supreme good in that situation will readily and willingly by itself stand against a entire army of looters. And then when good people see one good guy who's willing to go up against 10 bad people at the same time, they're going to think, oh my God, I need to help this guy for two reasons. One is because good recognizes good and evil seeks to exterminate good. And if you don't help good prevent itself from being exterminated, then the status quo moves in the wrong direction. But secondarily, the good realizes that in addition to losing one good individual like that, an individual like that is willing to go toe to toe by themselves against an entire mob is absolutely higher on the power scale than the random average good person. So then maybe you get 4 or 5 people showing up to help that one guy who's defending himself against the looters. And I think it's important to note something. Evil is always weaker than good. So that's why you will see these situations where like 3 to 5 good people can hold off 10 to 20 evil people. Why? Because evil always seeks the path of least resistance to its goal. And it really boils down to experience points. Think of everything like an MMO, right? Eventually, you gotta get to level 60 if this is World of Warcraft. But if you just get carried to level 60 by one of your friends who's mob tagging and AoE farming, when you go to do that raid, you are not gonna be playing like an actual level 60. You're gonna be playing like a level 20. And unless they farmed gear for you too, you're going to have absolutely shit gear. But if you by yourself went and you did all the dungeons, you did all the quests, you have, first of all, much better gear. Like, you're gonna have at least greens and everything, probably a couple blues, and maybe a cool couple quest items too that make you really powerful. But not only that, you're gonna know how to play that character better. One of those self-leveled characters is worth like 5 of those characters that got carried to 60. And everybody knows it, right? Anyone that has played an MMO at any point can obviously tell when someone that hasn't played the game is playing on someone else's account, because there's just really basic things they don't do. And the same thing happens in good versus evil, right? That's why you see these supreme good, and it will absolutely crush the supreme evil, because supreme good always does what is necessary, not what is easy. And doing what is necessary is more difficult than what is easy. So therefore, you get more experience, you get more benefits, and you just overall become stronger, right? Do I like working out? No, I fucking hate it. There are people that love it. I despise it. It feels like I want to be doing anything else. And I haven't been good about it lately, but you know what I still do? I still force myself to go for a walk, even when I don't want to. When I want to be playing a video game or sitting there working on creating a new piece of content, I'm like, you know what? I need to take a couple hours, go walk a couple miles. I need to do something to continually level up. Even though it's not easy, even though it's not fun, even though it's not quick, it's necessary, right? Now, you look at the person that chooses to do the easy, simple thing, and they're fat and out of breath because all they do is sit on the couch all day and watch Netflix or whatever the hell and eat a bunch of unhealthy food. Now, in a situation where we have a physical altercation, who is going to win? I am, because one, I'm stronger and faster and probably more mentally acute, which allows me to develop a better strategy. So even if they are so fat that I can't possibly overcome them in the altercation, that person would be so fat that they couldn't possibly catch me, you know? So An individual good is always stronger than an individual evil. But because evil is easier and most people are just inconsequential pieces of shit, they just take the easier path. So they end up being servants of evil, which is why you will often see 5 good people fighting against 10 bad people, but the 5 good people still win. And I think that's basically everything I wanted to cover. The big thing was really the organization of consciousness, the way I see it, and how these demons invade our consciousness and how we can defend against it. So there's one other thing, though, and it's especially if you get deep in the throes of the demons aren't your fault necessarily, right? Because there are things that can force demons into you that you did not accept. For example, if you get sexually assaulted, that's going to put some demons in your head, regardless of what you did. No matter how strong you are, how devoted to the light you are, that's going to inject a lot of darkness into you, right? So that's one of the reasons why we need to constantly remain vigilant, is because there's always new bits of darkness being injected into each of us. So if we want to be a servant of the light, we need to absolutely make sure that we're fighting against that constantly, but also because things like that happen, especially if like an individual good encounters a greater evil, which is always happening, because remember, evil is cowardly and seeks the path of least resistance. So that's why muggers don't go after MMA fighters, right? They know that unless they have 10 people to beat up that guy and take his fancy suit, they're not going to stand a chance. What do muggers do? They go after the young kid that's in college. They go after the old grandma who has a walker, right? Because it doesn't take very much effort. It's easy, and that's what they rely on. So there's a very good chance in your life that you are constantly going to be coming up against evils that are more powerful than you, because evils that are even remotely similar to your power level will run away from you because they're afraid of you. So it's very easy to get overwhelmed by evil in this world because it's inundated with evil, and when you encounter evil, it's going to be evil that is either matched at your power level or greater than your power level. And that's why you need to rely on other good people for 2 reasons. One, collectively, it increases your power level. And the other one, which I would say is arguably more important, once evil manages to inject that darkness in you, especially if it's a very, very potent darkness, like being a survivor of sexual assault, then you probably need help to draw that poison out. And I would describe it as a matter of leverage, right? Think about it like having a splinter in a really weird part of your foot. Like theoretically, it's just a splinter. You should be able to pull it out easily. But how do you especially if you're not a very flexible person like me, like obviously if you're a contortionist or a dancer, you can just like pull it up in your face and grab that shit out of there and you'll be fine. But me, I can't I can sit about cross-legged, and that's the best I can do. How do I get my foot all the way up into my face to see that splinter and pull it out? Well, I don't. So either I need to dig around partially blind and pull it out myself the best I can, or I could get someone else to assist me with that. And even if I do pull it out myself, it's always possible maybe I miss a piece, or maybe I cause more damage to the surrounding flesh trying to find it than if I had just asked someone else to take a look at it and pull it out simply from a more direct angle. So, in addition to always being vigilant about the state of the cosmic conflict within yourself, it's also important to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with others that are devoted to choosing the side of good. And I think that's where we're going to end it on this one. I've got to do things. Do we mow the lawn today? I don't know. I haven't decided that yet. It's a likely scenario. I need to look at all the other things I need to do today. But yeah, well, we should be live later tonight. I don't know what time because the internet here isn't great and it's going to take a while to upload this 3-hour long video. But yeah, I'll probably be live after that. I haven't been streaming much lately, but that's because I'm working on all kinds of other things. Working on myself a lot, also working on the house. But I was live last night, be live again later tonight, probably more throughout the rest of the week, but I'm just grindingly constantly. I never give up, and you shouldn't either. Cheers.